Hey everybody, welcome to week 11 of our Victory Garden segments. Here we are in the Victory Garden in the parking lot, and as you can see, it's looking a little bit different than it did last week. So we finally got our fence installed, and that is here where we are in a little bit more of a commercial area. It's going to help protect our garden from anybody driving around in the parking lot, and hopefully also be a little bit of a predator prevention, so hopefully rabbits and things like that won't be able to get in. But just wanted to warn you that this video, there might be a little extra background noise that we apologize for, but we are actually just getting it finished up, getting our fence installed. So let's get on in and take a look at what we've got growing. Alright, so here we are in our flourishing garden. So our cucumbers are really starting to vine up. Our trellises right here, so just a little bit of twine, and they are coming up and they are staying pretty well under control. They're getting lots of nice flowers on them, starting to have a lot of little baby cucumbers. So we're going to start getting harvestable size fruits soon, and it's a really good sign to see so many flowers on here. And we also have been seeing some different pollinators in here, so that's a good sign that the flowers are going to get pollinated and we're going to have a really good cucumber harvest. Our tomatoes are a little bit wild still, but they're getting there. They'll start growing up the trellis a little bit more, and we've got green tomatoes now forming on most of the plants, but tomatoes are usually a little bit slower than we'd like. But hopefully within a couple weeks we're all going to get nice red tomatoes. Alright, and then over here, as you can see, we harvested some of our basil last week, but we didn't quite harvest it back enough, so it is going to flower. And so this can make it slow down in its leaf production, and if you want to keep getting lots and lots of leaves, you can definitely just pinch the flower top off. That's not going to really hurt the plant, and you can eat the flowers and all the leaves and anything. Otherwise, if you let it flower, it is a nice, also liked by pollinators type plant. So, you just decide if yours looks like this, what you want to do with it. So also our kale, we visited last week and said you could start harvesting if it looks like this. Definitely this week we are going to start harvesting it, because these plants are just really big and lush. And when we harvest them, it's going to just help them produce more and more kale. And our cabbages over here, they're just starting to put on little small baby heads, so yours should also be looking like that. Just getting more compact, and if you kind of feel it, you should be able to feel it being a little bit firm and dense, and it's going to keep getting bigger. And that's usually how I tell when it's harvestable size, is when it gets nice and dense feeling. It's not a lot of loose leaves, so if I push on it, it's going to have a lot of give or a lot of pushback. And that's usually how I determine if my cabbage is dense enough that it's worth harvesting. But another couple weeks on this for sure. Alright, and here we have the infamous zucchini plant. So if you've gardened before or know gardeners, you may have experienced the abundance that is the zucchini. So as you can see, we've got 3 nice small ones that I would harvest right now, because there is another maybe half a dozen or more on this plant alone that are ready to harvest. So zucchini is a plant that is very generous and can get a little out of control if you don't harvest them frequently. So make sure if your zucchini are starting to get good size that you want to cut them off, otherwise you're going to end up with the notorious 10-pound zucchini.
And here we have our acorn squash plant, and this is already starting to put some fruit on. It's got lots of flowers, and we've got a baby little acorn squash there, so that's very exciting. And then coming down this way, we've been talking about our beans, and look, our beans are flowering now. So they've got lots of little purple flowers on them. This means that we're really going to want to be watching them, because they're going to be putting fruit on really soon. And beans, once they start fruiting, you want to pick them really regularly. Otherwise they'll just get big and try to turn into seed, and they'll stop producing. So that's exciting too. And here we are at our carrots and our beets. Last week Sal talked about thinning, and so they've all been thinned and they're all doing really well. And I just wanted to show you, I know thinning can be, it can feel counterintuitive, it can feel like you're throwing away food, but the thing about thinning is that you just have to picture, I left these here. Now you just have to picture how big you want a beet to be, And then picture the amount of space that these little roots have. And you can see they're not going to be able to get to full size if you don't thin them. So we're just going to go ahead and pull some of these out so that we can actually get beets that are going to be full size. The same with the carrots. Right here I just left a little patch that wasn't thinned. And again, just picture how big the top of a carrot should be, and then make sure that the plants actually have that much room, or none of them are going to get to be big enough to eat. So that's just my encouragement about thinning. And here we have another one of our winter squash. I believe that this one is a butternut. But I just want to point out that this squash is sort of taking over the planet. And you don't have to let it take over your other vegetables if you don't want to. You can certainly go ahead and move vines. And in fact, if vines are starting to take over other plants that you want to save from being overrun, you can actually just cut off the ends of the vine and just go ahead and prune the plant a bit. It won't hurt anything, and it might keep your plant from taking over the universe. And last thing we're going to look at today are our pepper plants. So you can see this one is really nice and healthy looking, but take a look at these other three. Now they obviously are not doing well, and truthfully I have no idea what is going on with them, but my guess is it's a disease. Just the way the leaves are starting to die back, I think it's a disease. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pull up the three plants that aren't doing well. I'm going to leave the one that seems to be okay and hope that the disease hasn't spread over to it. And then I'm going to do some research on what this disease is and see if I can figure out what happened here. But I am going to get these plants out of the garden. So now we're going to talk about compost. And as I mentioned last week, we had this pile that's just been kind of hanging out here. I'm just going to point out while I have them in my hands that these diseased pepper plants, we don't want to put them in our compost pile because we're not sure that the composting process would kill off the disease, so we're going to put these in the garbage. But pretty much any other organic matter can go in the compost pile, so we're just going to take most of this pile and move it into the garden so it can be in contact with the soil, and we'll make a pile in there and show you what that looks like. So here I am digging into this compost pile that's been in the parking lot, and as you can see, it's already starting to break down. So there's definitely some compost starting to happen here. So we're just going to move this all over into the garden. So here's the rebuilt compost pile, and I just didn't do anything special. I just grabbed that pile that was in the parking lot and I just threw it in a pile here. In that process it got mixed, so that's a good thing for compost. And so now the layers have been mixed up and different things are in contact, so that will help speed it up. In addition to to making a compost pile out in the garden, we're also going to try and do a little rehab on these bins here. They haven't really been composting very well, and if you take a look inside here, there's a lot of really dry material on the top, and so that isn't going to break down very well. This is a lot of dry carbon material, and so this is going to need a little bit of help to get it to break down. So we did bring over some fresh weeds from the garden. So now these are leafy and green, and if we mix these in with the more brown carbon, so we can mix them or we can layer them, and that's going to kind of help this bin to get a little more healthy and get some activity going in there. Another thing that I would probably do is go grab a shovel full of dirt from our garden. That dirt has soil in it, and it also has compost in it, and so that's going to kind of inoculate this pile with some of the good bacteria and good little microorganisms that are in the soil that will help it to kind of activate the pile and start breaking down.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about something that we've heard some questions and comments on from some of our victory gardeners, going to talk a little bit more about insect control and kind of identifying if you need to do some insect control. So I've got an example of a kale leaf here, which, as you can see, there's a little bit of yellowing, there's a little bit of chew marks, a little bit of like pock marking on it, but really I would not say that this is an issue at this point. So if you've got a good, like, healthy natural garden, there are going to be insects, there's going to be pollinators, and there's going to be some maybe a little bit predatory insects, but if you're just seeing a little bit of damage, that is something that I just wouldn't really worry about. So again, here is an example of a basil leaf. There's a little bit of chew marks in it, and I mean, food doesn't look perfect. Food shouldn't look perfect. If you're growing it the right way, in a healthy way, like, there's going to be the natural ecosystem interacting with it. It's not going to look like this picture perfect produce, and if it does, then you're doing a great job. Keep it up, but yeah, don't expect that everything is going to look like this cookie cutter shape. So those are leaves that, I wouldn't really worry about. And then here's an example of something that I might start to be a little concerned about. So this leaf there's a ton of holes in it. It's almost getting skeletalized. And then also we can see there is a little bit of frass, also known as insect poop. So that would be a good indicator that what is chewing on this leaf is an insect and not like an animal. Whereas if you're not seeing any like insect excretions here, or you're seeing in fact like larger droppings next to the plant, or like it's gnawing off whole leaves, then that might be more indicative of an animal predator. And so if you do have some insect predators, there are a few in this area that can be pretty detrimental. So like Japanese beetles, potato beetles, squash beetles, and like cabbage loopers or cabbage moths, I think would be the top ones that you would encounter in a home garden. Would you say so?
Yeah, maybe cucumber beetles. They're little yellow ones, but I think probably not so much.
And for a lot of those, like, they're very host specific. So potato beetle you're going to see on your potatoes, squash beetle on your squash, cucumber beetle on your cucumber. So if you've got a lot of pests on one plant, that's a pretty good sign that that's what it is. And then the Japanese beetle, they're a little bit less host specific, but their top favorite plants to predate are roses, zinnias, and raspberries, and they will also go after trees and other vegetables, depending on what you've got around. So here are a few things that I like to use, just if I've got some issues, or especially like larvae are starting to crop up. So especially with the cabbage loopers or the cabbage moths, they're little green worms that can just get all over your cabbages, your broccolis, your cauliflowers. And so that is something that you can take care of with some really nice, like, organic, completely natural products. And one of them I brought is diatomaceous earth, which is made of just little crushed up like diatom shells. And so this is something that if the larvae eat, it'll just kind of shred them, and then they will not be a problem. So this is something that I'll sprinkle on the leaves or around the base of the plant to take care of any like larval issues. Another thing, and this is more of like a pond and pool specific, but this is BT Bacillus thuringiensis, which is a like fungal control of larval insects, and this one is again totally natural. And these are awesome because these I use in any like standing water to prevent mosquito larvae from growing. But you can also get it in like a liquid form and spray your plants, like your potato plants or your cabbages or cauliflowers or anything, and that's going to take care of the larvae.
Yeah, and just to note, Sal, the BT is very insect specific. So there's one BT for mosquitoes, there's a different BT for the cabbage worms, there's a different BT for the Colorado potato beetle. And so part of insect control is also making sure that you identify what your pest is and use the proper treatment.
Yeah, and one final thing I guess I would add is, it's helpful to find a product that's specifically targeting your pest, because there are some like broad spectrum insecticides or other like pesticides out there, but the problem is they're not going to be specific, and they are going to kill any insect larva you have. So that includes bees or butterflies or beneficial insects, which is why we really promote, using natural products and using products that are very, very specific, so that we're not harming any of our beneficial insects in our garden.
Right. Yeah. And I did bring along another form of insect control, which is basically just a barrier. This is called floating row cover. One brand name is Remay, and it's basically just a really lightweight fabric. You can see through it, the sun can shine through it, rain can get through it, and this can be helpful if you have, for instance, if you have cabbage moths and you see them early on, you can just cover all of your brassicas with something like this, and that basically is just serving as a barrier so that the cabbage moths can't get at your plants and lay their eggs. All right, well, now that harvest season is upon us, I just wanted to note that we will be donating all the produce from the Victory Garden. So I just wanted to also let you know that if you have extra produce from your gardens, frequently food pantries can get the food to people who could use it. And I found a website called ampleharvest.org. And that website allows you to just put in your zip code, and then it'll let you know all of the food pantries that are in your area, and it lists their phone numbers. So if you are thinking about donating any produce, call ahead and make sure that they can handle fresh produce, and just see if there's any special requirements that they have as far as packaging or washing. Well, I think that wraps it up for this week. So thanks again for joining us, and as always, go ahead and put any questions that you might have in the comments, and Sal and I will be paying attention and trying to get you answers. And also don't forget to share pictures, videos, thoughts about your Victory Gardens using the hashtags, and join the Amory Victory Gardens Facebook page. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
And we have a few more Victory Gardens to show you from some pictures that were taken in early June.